You're listening to the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Bill McIntyre, and it's time for this week's Long Island News, the show that talks to newsmakers from Nassau and Suffolk County that matter to Long Island and Long Islanders like you. So each week, we'll have a conversation about issues that affect all of us. Well, I live on Long Island, and like all of you, I would like to know more about where the tax dollars are going, and I want to know more about the people making the big decisions that affect all of us, which is what we hope to accomplish each week on this show. So our guest today is Faren Siminoff, the president of the NCCFT, that's the Nassau Community College Federation of Teachers, which is Nassau Community College's full-time union, and it's a local of NYSUT, the New York State United Teachers, a federation of more than 900 local unions representing more than 480,000 people who work in or are retired from New York schools, colleges, and healthcare facilities. Now, Faren has been a professor in the Department of History, Political Science, Geography, and Latin American Studies for over 20 years, and is an attorney and former contract negotiator on behalf of a public benefit corporation. Welcome to this week's Long Island News. How are you?
Good. How are you doing? Thank you for having me.
It's Friday. It's always good to at least start out with Friday. So what is the role, the NCCFT, and the role of full-time faculty in the college?
We represent the full-time faculty. So we are the professors, we're the counselors, we're people in the bursar's office, we are ITS people. We are all of those faculty, as we call ourselves, that provide the basic everyday services for the campus and particularly for our students. That's what our role is. We're the people that design the curriculum. We're the people that are mentors to the students. We're the people who advise students. We're the people who help our students when they're having problems with the programs, the IT programs that they have to access, like Banner. We're the boots on the ground providers that make the college hum.
Right. So it's not just the professors that you're representing. There must be a whole strata of employees. Do you actually do the bargaining, the collective bargaining for all your members?
We do. Yeah. There is an adjunct union as well. Mm-hmm. And we also have people on our campus who are very much part of our community who belong to the CSEA, and that's the clerical staff and the public safety staff. There's a number of different bargaining units, but we represent the full-time faculty. And when we talk about faculty as the NCCFT, as I said, we're talking about people that I guess normally a lot of the public would not think of as faculty, but they are.
I always thought of faculty as teachers. I mean, I think we all default to it's teachers, but you're right. There are a lot of other facets. I think of a college as like a small city, and you have to, self-contained, and oftentimes the lights go out in a town and the college goes back on in a couple of minutes because they're ready for those kinds of things. And we don't think, faculty, that's interesting. So many job descriptions.
It's hard to keep track of it. Sometimes I've only been, as you said, I've been at the college for close to 25 years. Primarily, I think of myself first and foremost as a professor. I'm a professor of American history. That's my real identity. We think of ourselves as, you're right, as a community. It is a community. It is called Nassau Community College, but right. All colleges, all institutions of higher learning, I think they work best when they are communities because our students will come and go. Some students stay for 2 years. Some students just come to take a couple of classes and leave. Some students come to get a whole degree and then, for example, move on either to a job or they move on to a 4-year college. And a difference, community college provides a whole range of opportunities for, students, people in the community. And probably a lot of people don't know that a full 25 to 30% of all Nassau residents at some point will use the college. So that's a lot of people. And people use community colleges in many different ways. And it makes our job, in some respects, even more complicated than if we were a 4-year residential college. And so we must be a community. And one of the things that a full-time faculty does, and the reason it's so important, is that we provide the community continuity, the cultural continuity that the college needs and our students need to continue to function, and to have that kind of sameness or ability to change and understand the needs of our community from semester to semester to year, and from obviously generational shifts in our students. If we didn't have a full-time faculty, you would just have people coming in, teaching and leaving, or providing a service and leaving. But how do you get to know a student population, a cohort? How do you get to understand the shifts in a society and what a society needs if you do not have any continuity? And so the full-time faculty provides that. And that's what we as the NCCFT represent. And that's our goal.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm familiar. Obviously, I went to Nassau Community College. And it's interesting because a lot of people in the community don't realize that, some of the services that the college has to offer just by being here. Classes, I mean, if older folks want something to do, they can always go and order the class. You can go in and talk to the people who run things, and they'll set you up with whatever your interest might be in. And the list of things is incredible. When you open up the folder and you look at all the things they offer, oh my God, who knew? And I always say on the show too that Nassau Community College is like the best kept secret. People don't realize that the professors that teach at Nassau Community College also teach at all the other prestigious schools in the area. You spoke about adjunct professors, and they're all over. In some cases, you can go to one school and pay X amount of dollars for that same professor, and then you can go to another school and you can pay X times 2 for your tuition costs for the same professor, which is, very interesting. I have a specific question for you, though, okay. and this may not be the time, but it's occurring to me, so I just want to ask it.
Okay.
There are some teaching employees in some facets of education that only have a 10-month contract. They'll work 10 months for the year, and then if there's a summer school, they may work for those 2 months, but they're contracted just for those 2 months. And in some cases, they've been notified that if they get hurt on the job, workman's compensation will not be available to them during a summer. That sounded odd to me. I didn't realize that workers' compensation was something that could either be bargained away or asked for in a union contract.
I've actually never really heard of that.
Really?
I'm not quite sure.
Well, I'm an old human.
I'm not quite sure what you're referring to. As I said, I've been on the job for 7 months. I haven't run into that.
Right. Well, it's not at the college level. It's not at the college level.
Oh, it's at another level.
Yes, it's at another level. So it may not be a fair question to ask you.
Yeah, I wouldn't know that.
When I heard this, the only thing that I was concerned about is workman's comp. I didn't think that was something that employees and unions would haggle over. I just thought it was something that existed. If you went to work for someone and you got hurt, you would be entitled to avail yourselves of the services of workman's comp.
Well, I'm going to be honest with you. I wouldn't want to get into the realm of legal malpractice. And lawyers, like every other, specialized professional, like other professionals have specialties.
Right.
That kind of law is very specialized, and you would have to ask somebody who specializes in that law. I do not. If that were to come up,
right.
Say somebody brought me that question, I would then, as a good union president, say, and as a good professor, say, I'm really not sure how to answer that question. And one of the things that we try to teach our students, by the way, is when you don't know something,
it's okay not to know something. Yes.
Okay not to know something. And then what we do in an educational environment we go and find the answer, do research. So what I would do if you were to ask me that question as a member, I would be, wow, I've never heard that one before.
Right.
And I would go and I would research and I would find that answer out for you, because I'm asked questions all the time that, I simply don't know the answer to. And I think sometimes leaders of organizations or people generally make the mistake of trying to put themselves forward as somebody that knows absolutely everything.
Yeah. I read a great quote just yesterday that said it's, most really smart people are not afraid to tell you they don't know something.
Exactly.
I kind of operate this show on that whole premise because I don't know anything. I really don't. I can assume things, and but you're right. There's nothing wrong with saying I don't know. Then we both go back to square one and say, okay, what do we know about it? Well, we only know what it's called. It's called workman's compensation. So let's go look at, I was just surprised because I'm an old union guy. I'm communications workers in New York City for quite a few years, and I was with the inner circle of the union, so I do know how those things can operate. But when I heard that from this person, it stunned me that workman's comp would be one of the things that, it's like I could say you'll get an extra 15 minutes for coffee break if you'll make sure my numbers are up to 90% every week. How's that? Okay, so you go back and forth. But for someone to say, if you work these 2 months, you're not entitled to this.
Never heard that.
Me either, which is why I brought it up, So, okay. Well, it's out there now, and you and I can...
It's out there, and good, good journalists and a good professor will go and do our research and find out the answer to it. And it may turn out that it was one of those kind of hearsay urban legend things that has weight, or it may turn out that it does.
Yeah. I just, it just rang a bell, and I went, well, you know what? I've got to keep that in mind. So in my travels, I can ask people who may be exposed to that kind of thing. And here's a question, of course, at the station, but what's the role of a community college in the life of the county and vice versa? I
think that community colleges in the life of any county, and certainly in the life of Nassau County, I think we do a number of things. One is that in order to attract people to live in your community, you need to offer them services. You need to offer them a way of life and access to the types of services that people see as a draw for them. And community colleges do that. We offer, high quality, low cost education, low cost relative to, spending $75,000 a year at a private, residential college. And so when you have a really good community college, I think that it helps people to say, maybe I will use it, maybe I won't use it, but it's a resource for me. It's sort of like saying to a healthy person, you're going to move into our community and we have no hospitals. But don't worry about it because you're healthy and you've never used a hospital before. Well, I think most people would say to themselves, wow, I think I'd like to have a hospital in case I need one. I think the same is true here. People want good education, right? They want good education for a wide variety of reasons. They want it for their children. They want it for their grandchildren. If you have a business, you want it so that you can have a well-educated workforce. You want well-educated people because we are a democratic society, and democracies run with an educated population. When the founders originally put forward this very interesting experiment that's become known as the American experiment, one of the quotes was, democracy is great, but you have to be able to hold it. And one of the ways in which you hold it is through education. All of the founders believed that education was extraordinarily important for a democracy. So if you want to live in a society, and if you want to live just on a micro level in a good county, in a good community, you want a well-educated population. Now, that doesn't mean we're all going to have the same education exactly, right? I went to school, I became a lawyer and then a historian. I'm certainly not qualified to be an electrical engineer. Right.
Well, your plate's kind of full though, so that's okay.
Right, but you don't want me messing with your electrical system in your house. But we all do want some sort of foundational education, something that gives us opportunities, something that gives us, particularly in today's society where people are, we estimate, going to have maybe up to, these kids growing up now, 11 different types of jobs over the course of their lifetime. We want people to be flexible, and we want people to be good residents and good citizens of and members of the communities that they belong to. A good community college, a strong community college will give you that, will help to provide that kind of educational base, and that will be a draw. Like, for example, Nassau County has always had a reputation of providing good schools for people, and it's been a big draw. I think we all understand these days that while in 1945, most people did not go to college, right? Something like, 11% of the entire population went to college. That's not true anymore. Then it became, you needed to have, high school. Then it became, now it's, you have to go to college. Most people need to have some amount of college education, and probably as we're moving through the 21st century, more and more college education. And so people are not just looking for a good K through 12, they're also looking for higher education resources. And that's what Nassau Community College gives and provides for the county. And by the way, the estimates are for every dollar the county invests in Nassau Community College, we return somewhere between $8, which is, I think, is the minimum, and I've read as much as $13 per dollar that's invested. So there's many things that we contribute.
What's happening now, though, with the atmosphere? I mean, a lot of talk about the student loans and the reason that young Long Islanders are leaving the island. That atmosphere, now there's a lot of talk about trade schools and how kids in high school maybe shouldn't all be steered into going to colleges. They should maybe go to trade schools and learn a trade. And I think that we're going to see a bigger percentage of that, only because of the scare of the debt that going to school can bring to people. Some people are kind of dead in the water. There's no way they're going to buy a house. And they better get a job that pays not only to sustain their life on Long Island, but to pay off that loan.
Yeah.
It's kind of a bad spot to be in,
Yeah. I think what you've raised is the beauty of a community college. Community colleges, you can do 2 years. You're not going to go into a huge amount of debt.
Right.
It'll give you the opportunity to kind of see what you're interested in. As you said, we offer a lot of options. And, when you're 18 years old, I don't know about you, but, it's been a long time since I was 18. But I do remember that at 18, and I know this from seeing my students, 18-year-olds don't always know what they want to do with their lives. And that's understandable. So for a lot of parents and a lot of students, you have to ask yourself, why are you going to send your 18-year-old to some very, very expensive 4-year residential college? Even a 4-year residential SUNY is very expensive. And rack up that kind of debt, which is going to become almost like a mortgage for your child, for your son or daughter. And instead, let them go explore at a community college. Let them, get the advantage of a really, really good education. Yeah,
and let them find out whether or not college is for them. In some cases, they're just not a match. I mean, some kids grew up, and I hate to say this because I don't want, maybe little kids listening to this might say, see, Dad, I can play those video games. They sat and played video games through their whole childhood, and they grew up to be very well-paid programmers and video game makers.
Well, the beauty of Nassau Community College is we are a transfer school. You can transfer, and most of our students do. But we also have other options. We have what you were talking about, computer game design.
Ah, there you go.
We do offer certificate degrees in these types of, programs, electrical engineering, computer game design, culinary, hotel. We do offer all these things. So we offer a really wide range, as I said, and we're all about options. And I believe life is all about options. The more options we can give to people and to also our young people, the more attractive Long Island will be. And the other thing to remember is that our students that come to Nassau Community College, they tend to stay in the county. If you look at the demographics, the population growth of the county over the last decade, it's been fairly flat. And there's been a real concern about, population going down, population just holding steady and not growing. Well, one of the beauties of Nassau Community College is, and see, here you are too, and you went to the college, is our students tend to stay. They tend to get jobs here. They tend to finish up their education. If that's what they want to do, they buy homes, they, create families, and they become, the bedrock, the backbone of the college, of the community.
Well,
so we have, many advantages.
Conversely, too, I know people that went to Nassau Community College and then moved across the country and applied at other colleges. And never in that I can remember has anyone said that someone did not take a credit from Nassau Community College. And I know people who've gone to Berkeley in California and transferred their Nassau Community College credits. And when you think about that financially, for the X amount of dollars that you paid, you got all of these credits. You can go to some schools and pay 10 times that. But your degree is still going to be for the second school you went to. You can do your first 2 years at Nassau, you can transfer those credits, and then you only spend the big bucks for 2 years to finish out your degree at one of the prestigious schools.
Exactly. Or for people, for example, who are going to go on, a lot of people now have to go on and get masters. Or if you're going to go and become a doctor, or you're going to become a lawyer. Higher ed doesn't end these days at a BS or a B or a BA. More and more people are now going on to get other degrees. And so if you don't have to, as you pointed out, if you don't have to bankrupt yourself in the first 2 years, if you don't have to wind up with such big debt, you're many steps ahead.
And I don't want to speak for you, but I think we both come from a time when someone could work a part-time job and pay for their college education. And those days are long gone in most cases.
Yes.
Yeah. You were talking about it, interestingly enough, you said before, talking about the founding fathers and the democracy. And isn't that what Franklin said when he came out of that Second Continental Congress meeting? Someone asked him, Mr. Franklin, what do we have? Do we have a king? Or do we have a democracy? And he said, well, you have a republic if you can keep it.
Exactly.
And today's atmosphere in a college, I heard a comedian, and I keep quoting this guy. I gotta go find his name because I forget it. He was talking about, in the United States, we've had wars on everything. And in the past bunch of years, we've had, we have divisions with the rich and the poor. So there's one war. And then you have the racial thing in black and white and those disagreements. But nowadays, what he pointed out was what we have today. The issue is lies and the truth. That's our dichotomy today. That's what our war is, lies and truth. And a good quote was that a democracy depends on agreed upon truths. An autocracy depends on agreed upon lies. And then we go back to research. And everybody says, oh, I researched it. I only really learned how to research by going to graduate school. That's where you really learn how to research and have faith in what you've found. When you know your sources, you know who's speaking. These are all things, and this is a big responsibility for Nassau Community College in general. Propaganda is a big thing. When Devin Nunes quit Congress to take over for the social media as a CEO, the message that I got was that Devin Nunes feels that there's more power in propaganda than there is in Congress.
Well, obviously, social media has become a huge part of our lives, but autocracies have always depended on propaganda. I mean, if you look at the Third Reich and Hitler, you'll see he's one of the really early leaders that really knew how to use propaganda. And I think that this is obviously an issue in education. Training our students now not only to do research and to understand what they're looking at in a book, but also being savvy on social media. And it's, particularly as a history professor.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Maybe not in engineering so much, but certainly as a history professor, this is something that we struggle with. We shouldn't be arguing over facts.
Yeah, right.
Now, but we can argue, and we can have different interpretations about what things mean, what they signify.
We've definitely got to be able to talk. We've definitely got to be able to talk.
But we need to have some sort of agreed upon set of facts. And, they also say that if a society cannot have a basic vision for itself, agree upon some basic values, particularly our society, which is really a civic society. We're not based in race, we're not based in religion or ethnicity. We don't go back thousands of years, but we're really founded on this notion of a civil society that has this document and basic principles that we kind of all are buying into. If we stop buying into it, it's going to be a problem.
Well, sure. Faren, I've got to ask you, you got to promise to come back sometime because the clock on the wall is screaming at me right here. We're going over, so I don't want to do that to the text. But there's plenty more to talk about, and we don't even have to bring up engineering. You've got a lot of stuff on your plate. It would be very interesting. I want to thank you for your time. I know you're busy here too at the college, and we'll get you to come back soon. Okay.
I thank you for what you're doing. I think it's very, very important. I thank you for inviting me, and definitely I'll be happy to come and chat with you anytime. It's very interesting.
Great.
So thank you.
Great. And
thank you. Thank you for having gone to the college and being at the college.
I had the greatest time. I really did.
That's good. That is good to hear. That is the best publicity that the college can have is from our alum and people just come and use the college, just even for a few credits, to say they had a great time, they had great professors, and, and they appreciate it. And we appreciate you, our students, for sure.
Thank you, and be well. We'll talk to you soon.
You too. Stay well. Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Well, the clock on the wall says it's time for this week's Long Island News to move on out of here. We thank you for joining us. Remind you can catch this week's Long Island News every Friday at 3 p.m. right here on 90.3 WHPC.